So Alexander Volkanovski versus Yair Rodriguez is the main event of UFC 290 on International Fight Week, and I believe Volk will get this done, but I am not confident in this pick at all. Volk is a great fighter. In my opinion, he is pound for pound #1 in the entire UFC, but Yair Rodriguez is his most dangerous matchup in the entire featherweight division. I am extremely worried that we can see Volk get KO'd out cold against Yair. Matter of fact, I think that Yair has the best chance to put out Volk. But I think Volk is just way too good. He's way too experienced. He's getting better. He started MMA very, very old. So he's hit his prime right now. He's at the peak of his career. He's coming off a loss against Islam where you can argue that he won and that he whooped his ass in the later rounds. Volk looks amazing. He's been amazing. And Yair, he's had some really iffy performances throughout his career. He was losing, getting beaten up by the Korean Zombie until landing that almost fluke elbow. Yair has been somewhat lackluster, but recently he's been coming into his own. He came off, I think, 2 years of being totally off, not fighting, to fight Max Holloway, and looked great in the process. He really took it to Max Holloway, but he did end up losing that fight by grappling, and that's my main reason to why Volk can find a way to get this thing done. But Yair is actually, funny enough, really solid off of his back. We saw in the Brian Ortega performance that he put in an armbar fairly quickly against Brian Ortega, who we know has phenomenal, maybe even the best jiu-jitsu in the entire UFC. I think him and Oliveira are the two guys you can argue to have the best jiu-jitsu. We saw even against Josh Emmett that he put in a triangle choke against him. He has really good submissions off of his back, but I think Volk will be able to stay safe in the later rounds, be able to stay on top and really kind of abuse and use Yair Rodriguez on the ground, be in full guard and land solid ground and pound. Volk has some of the best ground and pound in full guard. He even made Islam Makhachev look human when he was in his guard. Volk pretty much beats up anybody in their full guard. You can even argue that at the end of the 4th round or 3rd round, I believe, against Ortega, that you could stop that fight. Ortega did not even get up to get on the stool. His own cornermen pulled him up, put him on the stool, which is illegal, by the way. You can't do that in the UFC. You have to get up on your own and go to the stool by yourself. Otherwise, it's a TKO finish. But the UFC let that pass. But Volk really beat the brakes off of Ortega. And if he gets Yair in that position, if he's gassed, if he's hurt, if he's in any sort of way compromised on the ground with Volk, you best believe he's going to land massive haymakers of ground and pound on him. So I do believe that Volk's best bet in this matchup is to try to find a way to get this to the ground in the later rounds, maybe even the early rounds, kind of try to get Yair off of his game a little bit, because he is very dangerous on the feet. Yair has some of the fastest head kicks and kicks in general in the entire featherweight division. He is super speedy, man. He is really quick with his kicks. He demolished Max Holloway's legs in their matchup. He even landed some flush head kicks. If Max Holloway didn't have a solid or even the best chin in the UFC outside of Marvin Vettori, I think he and him are 1 and 2. He would have KO'd Max Holloway, I think, fairly quickly. And Volk's chin is not a Max Holloway chin. He gets rocked in a lot of his matchups. He got rocked against Chad Mendes. He got rocked against Islam Makhachev. Max Holloway twice in rounds 1 and 2 of their second fight. So Volk's chin is able to be put down, and that's where this fight gets kind of worrying. Yair has been improving his game, I think, quite noticeably in his past few fights. When we first came in to watch him against Max Holloway, people thought that this was going to be a demolition, a complete one-way street traffic for Max Holloway to beat Yair, and he showed that he had great cardio when he didn't have good cardio before. So maybe Yair might be on some EPO, but his cardio was one of his biggest doubts going into that Max Holloway matchup, and he put that to sleep. He showed great 5-round cardio, and then he goes and fights Ortega. And say what you want to say about if it was a fluke shoulder injury. I think Yair Rodriguez put in an armbar. I think he legitimately hurt Ortega's shoulder in that moment. It was kind of fluky, don't get me wrong, but I think that was more of Yair's doing by getting Ortega in a really bad position early in that fight. And before that, he was landing some crazy 1-2s on him. He would put a jab out there and come back with the right hand, and he would land flush on Ortega's chin. Ortega has a solid chin, and I think that Yair can definitely touch the chin of Volk at some point, but Volk is also no slouch on the feet. He will invest in leg kicks. He will invest in the body. He will do his best or his due diligence to make sure that he is landing on Ortega. And I think overall in skill on the feet, he is better than Yair. Yair is just very fast, twitchy. He has those really fast kicks and hands. He's really explosive in the first round, and he can carry that into the later rounds as well. So that's where it worries me. But his one hole, like I mentioned before, is definitely 100% the grappling. If you can get him down on the ground and stay safe on the ground against Yair, Volk can definitely 100% dominate this. Yair will have a great first round, a really awesome, solid first round, and maybe even drop Volk. I think he might even win the first two, if I'm going to be totally honest here. Yair is just that good. But I think Volk will eventually pressure him more, get him down, probably with an outside trip against the cage, find a way to shoot a good takedown on him or get him down to the ground, and then just whoop on him in full guard, beat him up and land heavy shots of ground and pound, and do pretty much whatever he wants against Yair, as long as he can stay safe, which is also kind of a worry, man. Like I know I'm going back and forth a lot in this video, but there's a lot of good counterpoints to this fight with Yair. Volk couldn't really stay safe against Ortega, who was already pretty much done in the fourth round. He almost had a Darce choke against him. The guillotine, you know, the big guillotine that Ortega had, he dropped him with the right hand, more so off balance, didn't really walk Volk, and then lashed up a guillotine super quick. And Volk is that kind of guy who's gonna sleep before he taps. He would rather take a nap in the middle of the cage and lose his belt that way than give up and tap on his own. But I don't see Yair doing something out of nowhere. You know, Ortega has that ability to latch up a submission just completely out of the blue, out of the randomness of the fight, just dive on something and get it. And I don't see Yair having that level of that Ortega to be able to hop on something on Volk. And Volk maybe is even improving his ground game. He's a great game planner. He knows how to game plan fights very, very well. I can see him really just finding a game plan that works, finding some holes in Yair that I might not see, that the overall fan might not see, and finding those holes in Yair's game and really trying to exploit those. He's coming off a training camp where he had to really solely focus on defending takedowns. So I can really see a new high-level Volk who has great takedown offense, great defense, great everything in his grappling game. I can really be honest with you, I can really see that Volk's game is now solely and fully complete with that last camp to fight Islam. So going into this, I can definitely see him finding ways, or maybe seeing a new version of Volk that has great double legs or maybe great single leg takedowns. We might see that version of Volk, because I really do doubt that he's going to want to sit there and trade shots with Yair in the first or second round, because that would be, I wouldn't say it would be low IQ, but that would be the biggest risk that Volk could take in this matchup. And so what's next for him after this? The UFC right now is in a great spot in terms of matchups. I mean, really everything down the line depends on who wins and who takes less damage than that person. And we can honestly see him versus Islam again. Maybe not. If he does take damage in this matchup against Yair, I can see him having to wait out and Oliveira hopping over him to get that shot against Islam in Abu Dhabi. Because again, that's in what, 3 months, 2 or 3 months now. So it's going to be a bit of time, and it might not be enough time for Volk to recover to make a good turnaround to fight Islam in Abu Dhabi in October. So it would surprise me if Volk does manage to beat Yair very quickly. He's never been a finisher, never been the kind of guy to get a first round KO. He doesn't have too much power in his hands. He's more of just a technical guy, pressure you, put it on you, and break you down with his pressure or with his cardio. Just like kind of how Max Holloway does it, but better with the leg kicks and all that stuff. So I can really see Yair, I wouldn't say breaking, but I can see him pretty much almost breaking in that 4th or 5th round. And we're going to see Volk again in those championship rounds show that he is the best fighter in the world. And I am kind of expecting him to go out there and prove that to everybody if he hasn't already proved it. If there's still some doubters that Volk is not the best in the world, that he's not pound for pound #1, even over John Jones, I don't care. There will be no doubt after this fight that Volkanovski is the best featherweight to ever do it in the UFC. He can surpass Aldo with this win. And if you're not convinced about that, he can definitely surpass it by being an Aljo coming up, maybe if he does manage to beat Sean O'Malley. But I think this win, for me personally, will solidify Volk as the best featherweight of all time if you don't already think that he is. But then again, Yair is a very dangerous matchup, a very scary one at that. He has the best chance of beating Volk, and I can definitely see him being able to KO him. He might be the first person ever to really put down Volk and KO him out cold. Volk is now getting up there in age. He's not a young man anymore, but he's still in the prime of his career. I think he'll take some shots. He'll get rocked in the first round. He might lose his second, but I think the third, fourth, and fifth will be his for the taking, and he'll prove again that you just can't hang with him. Volk is the best featherweight of all time. With that being said, thank you guys for watching. Make sure to like and subscribe and hit that bell icon as well. If you watched up to this point, I do appreciate you as well. Volk wins by 3-2 decision. Peace.